and welcome to this special interaction we have planned for you with a very special person who has been associated with the Indian financial system for almost 4 decades, who's been a regular on ET now as a contributor, as a guest editor and guest for almost over 11 years now that we are completing our 11 years of operations. And now Mr. Arundhati Bhattacharya is taking over as the country head of Salesforce, multi-billion-dollar cloud-based CRM company in India. Arundhati, thank you so much for your time and congratulations for taking over of this position and your new avatar.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's
Arundhati,
great seeing all of you.
Great. Arundhati, I want to ask the first question to you is, you've been a hardcore banker, PSU bankers, one of the biggest banks in the countries at the helm of the affairs. How's the transition from the banking industry to automation, technology, and a multinational large company heading its Indian operations now? How did you prepare for it, or research for it, made up your mind? And tell us about that process.
Well, in one way, I would say that I'm preempting probably what the banking industry is going to become in another 5 years. When I was the chairman of the bank, we used to often joke as to whether the banks will become IT companies who would also do banking. And probably I'm trying to tread that path and see whether that's going to be a fact or not. But jokes apart, I think, after I retired, I had been interacting with a lot of young folks, in the during the period when I was on gardening leave. So I had gone on many lecture tours with the colleges, schools, investors, a lot of these things. And in most such places, especially the younger generation would keep asking that, you had a 40-year career. Do you see something like that for us? And I was to tell them that, that kind of a career, a birth to death career, so to speak, was not really imaginable in the future. And that, many of the people that I was interacting with, they'd end up having 2-3 careers in their entire lifespan. Because today, 60 is a retirement age. It's not really necessary to retire at 60. People are still so energetic. People have still so much to contribute, to give. And therefore, this idea that there should be more than one career, I really and truly believed in it. I also thought, that it was very important for us because of the very rapid evolution of so many things, whether it be regulations, whether it be compliance norms, whether it be technology, whether it be the ecosystem. It's very important for us to keep learning new things. And when we are learning new things, very often we need to unlearn some of the older things. Because unless you unlearn, you don't have a free enough mind to sort of absorb what is coming at you, what is new.
No, sure. It's so great to know that. In fact, I'm sure out of your rich experience of 4 decades in finance, Salesforce will be able to utilize it to create real value for the society, the ecosystem, and as well as the shareholders. And you're right, the alphabet may be different, but technology and finance are converging right now. And it's all about the language of money, be it the kind of valuations technology stocks are getting globally, Indian companies which are changing, transforming into technology companies, and you are on the board of, if I'm not wrong, at one of them. So we'll talk about all of that, but let's go back to I will request you to wear your banker's hat for a moment and tell us from your vantage point, you've taken a step back. How are you analyzing right now the way Indian economy is navigating its way through in this COVID slowdown? What are your thoughts? Where are we in the overall cycle right now?
So, this is a strange situation that we are in. We used to talk in many conferences about the VUCA world and the fourth industrial revolution and that it's all coming on. We are actually now living it. So we are no longer outside the VUCA world, nor are we anticipating the fourth industrial revolution. We are very much in the middle of the storm, so to speak. And therefore, there is no written playbook. The script is something that you have to make up as you go along. It's not something which where you have history to guide us. It's not something which people have already thought through and known. uh, Unfortunately, the pandemic is not really a black swan event. It's more like a gray swan event, because it was known that the pandemic would come at some point of the time or the other, but somehow or the other we continue to believe that it may not come, and therefore the preparation for it has been very poor. But now that we are in the middle of it, we have got to make up the story as we go along. Now, if you ask me where we are, I think India is in a very different situation from any other country of the world. I think we had to enter a hard lockdown because of the sheer numbers and the fact that we really didn't have the wherewithal in the healthcare system to enable us to remain open right from the beginning. And therefore, we had to have a very hard lockdown right in the beginning. However, you can't have a hard lockdown and not impact the economy hugely, especially in India, economy like India, where there is a huge amount of work that happens in the unorganized sector. Is just not feasible. So if you're going to support the people who work in the unorganized sector, you have to do a reopening of the economy. Again, there is no two ways about that. My only hope is that the few weeks time we got during the lockdown has given us enough of a breathing space to put together at least some of the healthcare requirements that we had. So whether they be PPEs, whether they be test kits, whether they be extra beds that are required to take care of these people. So, hopefully that was the time when the government put together all of this so as to be able to take on the impact of the pandemic. But the impact of the pandemic is going to be there. We are still in the middle of it. We have not yet seen the flattening of the curve, and it's very difficult to predict when that will happen. We are not a small state like, say, some of the smaller countries that have now declared victory on COVID. We are a very large country, and each center will have its own speed of when they will reach the top and when they will flatten out again. And we have to remain careful throughout. So, yes, what people are saying is we have got to learn to live with it. Because at the end of the day, we can't all just, shut down everything, keep ourselves locked in. People cannot live like that for, endless period of time. So the impact
Right.
is going to be there. Now, how hard will be the impact? I think the jury is still out. We still need to check how it will happen. I have only one instance, that I would like to quote as to how we will cope with this. And I would say that India has already experienced one VUCA event in the demonetization. Unlike the rest of the world, we had demonetization where within the space of 4 hours, 86% of the currency was declared as invalid. We went through those 60 days. Businesses did get impacted, but they came back. So there was an impact, but the impact was not such as to, break the back of society, so to speak. There were
Right.
difficulties, there were temporary difficulties. We started building again, we turned around again. So I think, we've already shown that it can be done. However, in the event of demonetization, there was a definite timeline to it. We knew that this was for 60 days, that these difficulties would go away in a matter of, say, maximum 60 days, not beyond. Here, we don't have any timelines. So we don't know when this is going to end. So therefore, there are far many more elements of the VUCA world in this one than there ever were. But still, I would say, given the resilience that India has, given the fact that, the rural sector on which
Mhm.
50% of our people depend, given that the rural sector appears to be lesser impacted, given the fact that the monsoons this time are expected to be good, given the fact that so many of the migrant workers who may have got impacted if they had stayed in the urban slums, that they have migrated back, given all of these elements and the fact that you cannot keep in abeyance demand forever, given all of these facts, I think we also have a chance to reset the economy and to start on a virtuous cycle of growth. Now,
Right.
whether we'll be able to do that or not depends a lot on the policymakers, depends a lot on the people who execute the policy. So we'll
Right.
have to see that as it develops.
Arundhati, talking of impact, the one space or sector which is really feeling the heat most is the banking space. We've heard from bankers of all shapes and sizes in terms of the impact. They are running and raising provisions, raising money, and providing for in their books as if a bigger storm lies ahead for the banking space. Uh, and they are the ones which are really interacting with the mid-size corporates, the smaller ones. What lies ahead for the banking space? The fear of NPA cycles spiking, which the street is factoring in, and hence punishing stocks from the banking space. Do you think that's a legitimate fear? Uh, what are your thoughts on the banking sector?
See, I think, this time around, the fears will always be there because uncertainty nobody likes. But, if you look at the banking space, much of the problems in the banking space had already been cleaned up, okay, when we hit the pandemic, in the sense that, the weak accounts had already been identified. There was a lot of provisions, even in a bank like SBI, the provisions have gone up to 83%. If you take away the assets under collection, it's still in excess of, I think, 63%. So, the provisions for the older NPAs are all very much there. And if you look at the newer ones, I feel, it'll be the weaker accounts that will fall, the smaller accounts that will fall. And there, I think, the government has come in with a lot of support to try and ensure that these companies don't have to go under, to try and ensure that they can continue to do their business for a year or so till they get back up on their feet. So I don't think, that the impact will be as great probably as it was between the years of 2013 and 15. It will be a one-time impact as things come back on, but it will be an impact on weaker and smaller accounts, not so much as large corporates falling. I think the Reserve Bank will also do a little bit of hand-holding. They are already showing the inclination for that, to do that hand-holding. But I think it's also prudent on the part of the bankers to raise capital. See, at the end of the day, raising capital is something any prudent person would do. You, as a prudent householder, haven't you withdrawn cash and kept it at home? Everybody has done that, because you don't know tomorrow there might be a quarantine on the bank for some reason, the branch that you are going to, the ATM may not work, you may need cash suddenly. So everybody has now got a little bit of cash at home, okay, to take care of emergencies. It's the same with banks. They are raising money in case of anything that they have not been able to uh, do, what should I say, and anything they have been able to envisage, anything they have not been really able to factor in. So what if, instead of the curve turning in July and August like everybody is expecting, what if it goes on till November? There might be a bigger impact. And so they're getting their capital up, which I think is absolutely prudent and the right thing to do. But having said that, again, I will repeat that India is a country where, the demand really rolls up from the bottom. This time, thankfully, the bottom is less impacted than the cities. Okay. So the demand will kick in. The demand is now currently kept in abeyance because everybody is at home. They are right down to basics. Nobody really needs so many things. And actually speaking, it's quite a revelation what all we can do without. These 2 months at home, we have realized how little we really need in order to survive. But it's not as though the demand has gone away forever. The demand will come back in, it will again hit. And as businesses come up, I think that cycle will start.
Right. That's quite comforting to know from you, from your observations, that you do not really expect corporate NPA cycle to go out of whack, and you actually expect things to start turning around. But when we speak to your friends from the lending community, say Ramesh Iyer from M&M Financial, Sundaram Finance, they are actually saying exactly what you're saying, that the rural end and tier 2, tier 3 demand is buoyant, repayments are happening in time, collections are good. But at the same time, commentary coming in for retail-centric urban lenders, say Kotak, for example, say Bajaj Finance, for example, does create nervousness in the mind of observers that probably is it this time could the urban retail borrower be in trouble? What are your thoughts on this side?
See, again, let me tell you that I think, this is the place where being data centric and being digital helps a lot. Okay.
Hmm.
So we really need to go with data and digital. And then you will get a much better idea about what the impact is like. Today, it is very difficult to understand the impact, mainly because there is an EMI waiver or abeyance, kept in abeyance, that's been allowed by the RBI for 6 months. Okay. So unless and until those repayments start kicking in, you won't really know where you are. However, if you are far more data centric, then you will be able to understand what is the status of your particular client and be able to take care about it. So what you can do is, you can rephase these installments and stick it at the end. You can just ask for the interest also to be capitalized and given as an EMI at the end of the loan. There are very many ways of handling this. See, in the urban context, the problem is, you have to be paid salaries. If your businesses are closed, if there is a lock on the door, the salaries won't be forthcoming. And therefore, you need to be able to live on your savings, which people are doing at this point of time. But as businesses open up, you will see that many of these repayments will kick back in. Because at the end of the day, the loans that are there on the retail segment, many of them are for things like houses. And the last thing people want to lose is the roof over their heads. And these loans are not for investment in real estate. These loans are mainly for investment in actual living spaces. Okay. In many cases, the first house that these people have. So, it is a little bit of an uncertain situation, which is why I think, to call what it will be like at this point is difficult. But I think, those players that have invested enough in technology to be able to understand what their borrowers are doing, how their borrowers will fare, that they do have a leading edge over this, that they will be able to control the situation as it unfolds. And yes, we need to get out to somewhere in October, November to really take a call as to what is the impact on economy. Till then, I think whoever says anything, it's still conjecture.
Sure.
It's not, you cannot say any of this with certainty.
Right. And you have analyzed the measures which global central banks have taken, governments have taken unprecedented measures so far, and also looked at what the Indian policymakers have taken. What do you make of the measures taken so far? And there's a one particular argument of the industry, the real estate slash construction industry, as well as the lending, that there should be a one-time restructuring which should be allowed, and that actually be the big help for the industry. What do you make of that? Is there a case for that?
So probably there is a case for that because in our system what happens is that once an account becomes NPA, it gets into the don't touch category. Okay, so somehow in India there is a tinge of criminality that comes into any account that becomes NPA, which is not correct. It's not correct at all. Yes, there could be some no good people where these problems might be there. But you cannot, paint the entire NPS segment with the same brush, because business is a function of risk. Okay, you take risk, and normally the higher risk you take, the higher return you get. Okay, that's simple, absolutely means that's a known principle that if you take high risks, you get high returns. But with higher risk also comes the possibility that there will be a much bigger downside. Okay, so business in any case is a venture where you have to take risks, and a risk like the pandemic is not something that most people have factored in. And therefore, when such a risk event occurs, it's quite likely that there will be an impact. Now, if this is an impact that is across industry, across organizations, then it is, in the interest of the policymakers to ensure that there is some handholding. Because without that handholding, what is going to happen is precious resources of our own country, they will go waste, and that doesn't make sense at all. And therefore, some amount of handholding is required. Now, whether that handholding is in the form of a one-time restructuring, whether it is in the form of one-time waiver, it could be in the form in so many forms. But I do think that some amount of handholding is required from the policymakers. And, I think they are open to it. It's just that, this may be too early to announce it. As I said, it's only when the curve starts sloping downwards that you will see more of these pronouncements going forward, because that will be the time when it will need to be action.
Okay. I would have loved to go on and on with you on the banking industry and economy, but we need to cover so much. Uh, let's understand your thoughts now that you are associated with a multi-billion dollar, multi-country entity like Salesforce. Uh, and of course, you come from the background of banking and economy. There's a lot of talk about V-shaped recovery, U-shaped recovery, uh, triggered by policy making action and central bank action globally in India. At the same time, if you listen to the commentary coming from IMF, Geeta Gopinath say it will be a profound slowdown. Where does your thinking lie? The kind of feedback you're gathering from the company's end, which is looking at things from their vantage point. How much long are we talking about? Global slowdown or Indian slowdown? Could it take 1.5, 2 years? What's the intelligent indication in your view?
So, you can throw all the letters of the alphabet regarding the economy, and, we may still not get it right. I would rather think, that this is a hiatus that gives good companies the time to step back and really strategize. This is not the time to just sit quiet. This is the time to strategize as to how you are going to be when the new normal hits. And one thing I'm certain, that it will be a new normal. The normal will not be the old normal. Now, with this new normal in place, what is it that you as a company can do in order to come out of this downturn in the best way possible? I think that's the time that people have right now, and that's how they need to use the time, they utilize their time. And actually speaking, I'm seeing from Salesforce side that there are a lot many more conversations that have started now and conversions where people were sitting on the sidelines. They are now beginning to take action. Where people were just beginning to think, now they are doing deep dives. So, people in business, in commerce right now are engaged in finding ways and means of what they will be like subsequent to this period of, facing the crisis. So the recovery phase, people are already planning for it. And I think that's the best way. You can see the measure of a good company only where you see people undertaking these activities, where they are seriously looking at how they are going to face the future.
I'm sure you're a great boss. You think you have such open ideas, and I'm sure you'll make a very good boss here as well. But I want you to leave us with your plans with Salesforce India. What's on your drawing board? What's Salesforce India plan, which they're going to execute with your leadership here? Leave us with thoughts on that.
So, Salesforce started in India in 2005, and then, it really started scaling its sales and distribution side only about 3 years back. Okay. So, the idea is that now we will scale all of it, meaning today in India, we have the sales and distribution, which is a smaller piece. We also have the engineering and the research and development side, which is called the TMP. We have a business development, which is also internal engineering that also sits out of Hyderabad. We also have a pretty large headcount for the services that support Salesforce users across the globe. We also have a workforce that has come in on account of Salesforce acquiring Velocity, which is a company that that Salesforce had invested in a long time back, as well as another company called Click, which sits out of Gurgaon. So, today what we are seeing in India is that we would like to scale it across. So whether it be in the engineering and R&D division, or whether it be in the support services, or whether it be in sales and distribution, I can only see growth for Salesforce in India, because there's a lot of white space in India that we still have to cover. Because we were small on the sales and distribution side, we had really not gone into very large corporates. We are there in some of them, but in pieces. However, there is a lot more that Salesforce can offer. So we are not only considered as one of the topmost CRM providers, but also we have very good analytics tools. We have excellent integration tools. We have some really innovative mobile offerings. So, there are a lot of things that we can offer to almost every segment of industry in this country. And we have not even started exploring that. We've just scratched the surface. So, there is a lot that can be done with this company here. And I intend and I hope that I will be able to be part of it, as we take it forward.
Great. No, I'm very confident that you would be able to do that, Arundhati. Congratulations once again and good luck for your new innings. And we at ET Now are looking forward to a great engagement with Salesforce here in India under your leadership going forward. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank
And
you for
stay
the
safe.
opportunity.
Take care.
Thank you. You too.